Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a long time, but we are at the end of the first month of the year, which is crazy. So I thought we should wrap up all the books that I read, talk about them, and also I want to have a little chat about the movies and films that I consumed in the month of January because I kind of want to make a visual diary this year of all the media that I consume so that I can look back on it at the end of the year. So obviously January is the best place to start. So let's just get into it. It's been a really great month for just reading so many good books and watching some good movies. So the first book that I read this month, starting off the year so strong, Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. This was actually my first ever Didion novel and I am so incredibly happy that I picked it up, and I think it was the right time. I've actually had this book on my shelf for quite a while and it was never the right time. I remember when I first tried to pick it up, it was not the right headspace, and I'm so glad that I waited. Basically, this book is following Maria, who is an unemployed actress in Hollywood in the 1960s America, and this book is a true dissection of the emptiness and the dissolution of the American dream, and basically just a woman completely trapped in the patriarchy, and just you get a feeling of emptiness, of despair. You can feel Maria's absolute existentialism coming from the pages. It's incredible. Now I want to read everything by Joan Didion. The Push by Audrey Audrain. Some have described this as a psychological thriller, but I would say it's more of a psychological drama in a sense. It definitely has some thrilling aspects, but it's more of an intense exploration of motherhood and almost like a horror in some ways. A very interesting exploration of motherhood and generational trauma. We are following our main character who upon becoming a mother is faced with the realization that it's not what she expected, in that her and her baby do not bond, and she feels as though her and her child are each other's enemy, which of course is not what you're raised to believe as a woman. You know, as a woman, motherhood is something that is an instant love and connection with your child. So this was so incredibly interesting in that it wasn't just our main character who faced this, but it seemed her mother and her mother's mother before that also faced this. So it's a very interesting discussion on that, kind of set in a more thriller style way. I think it was a lot more than just something that was written for a thrilling or a more thrilling story. I think it was written with a much deeper meaning in mind, which I really appreciated. Next book, Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This book is so heartbreaking. Michelle is grappling a lot with the passing of her mother. Growing up, they butt heads a lot in that Michelle was growing up as a Korean American in, the suburbs with a mother who had incredibly high expectations of her, and just culturally she grew up in a world that was a lot different to Michelle's, and they butt heads a lot. Michelle is kind of learning how, following her mother's death, her culture is her way to reconnect with her mom, and it is so incredibly heartbreaking. It moved me to tears a few times, especially since I listened to the audiobook for the majority of this memoir, which I think is so important when it is a memoir, because we hear the author speaking their own story, which just really makes everything a lot more impactful, and it was just beautiful. I would recommend, if you are looking for a memoir, to definitely pick this one up. The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I thought I would love this. It was beautifully written, but there was something missing that just didn't quite work for me. This follows a family and the different perspectives of these family members, kind of grappling with we're kind of looking at their views on our main character's decision to become a vegetarian. Obviously that does not sound like a big deal, but the reasons for her becoming a vegetarian, as well as just it being incredibly uncommon for them, it's unhinged and graphic at times, but it is very gripping, but not overall my favorite, unfortunately. I enjoyed the premise, but it didn't fully satisfy me, unfortunately. Everything I Know by Love by Dolly Alderton. I am very sad to say that I didn't love this. I thought I would adore this. I don't know. This is Dolly Alderton's memoir, so I don't know how much you can really criticize that, but honestly, I feel like she was trying so hard to be funny, but honestly, she just kind of came across as that girl in college that was just trying so hard to get a reaction of people all the time. And I just think her story was interesting enough that it didn't need to be doing so much the entire time. It didn't come across funny so much as it just came across jarring. Like, if I came across her during the day, I'd be like, girl, just chill out a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, so that was quite upsetting. I actually genuinely thought I was going to love it, and there were parts that I did enjoy. Her stories were really funny, and overall quite disappointing, to be honest. I'm sorry if you can hear the construction outside. It's pretty loud. Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I just love Sally Rooney. It is very apparent, and I know you either love her or you hate her, which, you know, unfortunately some people do hate her, but I can understand. It's not for everybody. This book follows Eileen and Alice, two friends who are just exploring their 20s and experiencing them in quite different ways. In true Sally Rooney fashion, this book is simply a character study following normal but flawed individuals learning how to live in their 20s. Of course, you know, in Sally Rooney books, the characters normally are not likable, and also they are not living in the real world. These are extremely privileged people who I probably would not be friends with in real life, but regardless, I think that's maybe why they're so interesting, because half the time you're just wondering about these characters' audacity to just, I don't know, there's something very enticing about her books, and I always love them. This was a 5 stars, but it was probably my least favorite of her books. How does that make sense? I don't know. They're all incredible to me, to be honest, but yeah, all her books are following imperfect people, and I will just always love this formula. Like all her books, you either love them or you hate them, and I loved it. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I cannot believe that this was her debut novel. It was incredible, and it is a trilogy, but so far I have not continued on yet. This is a fantasy novel based on real historical events in Chinese history, and wow, this book was amazing. We are following our main character Rin, who is from a rural part of the country, and she is basically living a life that is she's orphaned, and she is about to be sold off to be married. So instead she decides she's going to study and get a scholarship for a military academy in the city, and that's what she does. And this book, how do I even describe it? I don't want to spoil anything. It is just amazing. This would be my first really kind of fantasy military battle heavy novel, if that makes sense, and it was amazing. There is probably no joy in this book, if I am to be honest. It is harrowing, and it is dark, and it is painful, but it is amazing. Some of the descriptions are just heartbreaking, but it is amazing. I love that our character is also flawed. She is not perfect, but it's because of the circumstances that she is in, and she is still a heroine in her own ways. It talks about addiction, it talks about, you know, the struggles that females face in these. Obviously you check trigger warnings, but I would highly recommend, and I can't wait to continue the series. I think I'm going to give it a little break just because it was quite long and quite heavy, but I will be continuing on. This is also my hot water bottle, if you're wondering. Yeah, because it's quite cold. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This was very cute, a young adult romantasy. I believe it's young adult, and it was just adorable. I read this mostly as audiobook, which was actually a really fun way of consuming this book. We are following Iris and Roman I think they were in England. They had English accents, and basically Iris's brother goes off to war. There are fantasy elements in this, but they're not really gone into. It's basically a romance book in a world where there's a tiny bit of fantasy, but it's not really explored or anything. Basically her brother goes off to war and she's writing letters to him and she doesn't hear back. One day she hears back, and it's all on this like magical typewriter thing. She hears back, basically it's not her brother, but it's Roman, but he answers her anonymously. The two of them are rivals in they both write for a newspaper and they're rivals, and basically they don't realize that they are writing to each other. Roman knows, but Iris doesn't, and we follow their love story. And it was no masterpiece, but it was so cute, and I really, really enjoyed it so much. It was definitely nice to pick up after the Poppy Wars. All the Lovers in the Night by Miko Kamakami. This was my second book from this author, and it was beautiful, but as all her novels appear to be, it was heavy. This book follows Fuyuko, and she's a freelance proofreader in her 30s in Tokyo. And this book really delves into the loneliness of living alone in a big city and building relationships. She has a very, very tough time forming any meaningful relationships, and she doesn't really have anybody until she meets Hajiri, who is just completely different to her, this incredibly outspoken and loud woman, and also later a man called Mitsusuka, who both have a big impact on her life, and we are just following her and her bizarre character and her growth as she explores her relationships with both these characters. It was a really gorgeously written book, and I did really enjoy it. It was not my favourite, but it had some beautiful lines and a very meaningful story. Yeah. Next, we have 2 books left. I had to pick up a short little classic. It is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Written in the 1890s, this is a short work of feminist literature, kind of a discussion of the 19th century's approach or attitude towards women's mental and physical health, and how it was treated almost as if it was something that you could sleep off, or the Victorian rest cure, where, you know, if you're depressed or showing any symptoms of mental distress, you are confined to a room and you must rest and do nothing, which ultimately led to the mental destruction of a lot of women. And basically we're following an unnamed narrator in this book, who her husband is a renowned physician, and he believes entirely that this rest cure is what's going to help her. So our female protagonist is stuck in this room with her thoughts, essentially nothing else, to grapple with her mental turmoil, torment. And yeah, it's really short, but it is so impactful and also so still quite prevalent today and incredibly moving. And yeah, definitely a really great way to start the year. Next, I read Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton, and this book was amazing. Absolutely so much better than I thought it would be. This book set in the early 1900s. It is a book of forbidden love. We have a love triangle and ultimately just a tragedy. It's a book of irony in that our main character, he's married and he falls in love with his wife's cousin, and everything that he loves about his wife's cousin is that she's nothing like his wife. But ultimately in the end, it's like a discussion of being trapped in circumstances and things coming full circle in the most tragic way. It was beautiful, and genuinely I can't wait to read anything from this author. I'm so glad that I picked this up. It was so moving and just so surprising to me. Okay, those are all the books that I read. Moving on to films. This was a month of comfort films, but also a lot of comfort films or just silly films, but also some really good ones. This was not my most cinematic month in terms of what I watched, but I do want to start documenting all of the films that I consume over the years. So obviously first month of 2025, I still want to get the little tradition started for myself. So starting off strong, the first movie that I watched was Blink Twice, which is directed by Zoe Kravitz, and this movie was dark and really good. There was moments that the end left me questioning, but upon kind of researching and delving into what Zoe Kravitz was trying to say, I understand and appreciate the message, even if it wasn't the message I thought that she would have gone for in this movie. movie, I do understand the depth and powerfulness of that. This movie is a very strong, harrowing depiction of kind of a thriller. It's a very twisted and kind of, I hope, exaggerated story about the power and the power of men in Hollywood and their control, and yes, deeply dark and disturbing, but I loved it. Next, I watched We Live in Time. We Live in Time was so good, so heartbreaking, and that birth scene was incredible. It was so funny and moving all at the same time. I loved it. Oh my gosh. And Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh's chemistry is amazing. I loved that movie, but it was so sad. It was so sad. I don't know what I was expecting. Oh, it was so good though. Then we move in to a few silly comfort movies, which I actually either hadn't ever seen or had seen years and years ago, but while my boyfriend was over here visiting, we decided to have a little Marvel moment. So we watched Iron Man 1 and 2. I love Iron Man. I love Robert Downey Jr. He is so funny, and they're definitely the most enjoyable Marvel movies to me. Then we watched Captain America. Can this man just stop complaining? Honestly. This movie really annoyed me. I don't like Captain America. Please kindly shut up. Honestly. He was less annoying in Marvel, which we also watched, but not Marvel. In Avengers, but honestly, please. Go be a superhero. Please stop complaining. Okay, The Substance. It was so good. I loved it. I'm so sorry to my boyfriend who I made watch this with me, and he was so disturbed he couldn't finish his hot chocolate. And yeah, it's not for everyone. It's definitely a weird movie, but absolutely amazing. The commentary is so good, and I definitely recommend I really recommend delving into the director's vision and what they were really intending and what they meant by some of these scenes, because some of it was bizarre and I feel like could have been done in other ways, but honestly, just an incredible movie. I know that a lot of people really cannot handle body horror, so I think the shocking nature probably did drive away a lot of audience, but if you could get through it, it was so good. I loved it. Then I watched Thor and Iron Man 3. Thor, I remembered watching when it came out when I was really young, and I loved it at the time. Please, I know that, what is his name? What is the actor for Thor's name? Chris Hemsworth? Now, I'm not saying I can't act at all, but this man, that was literally just a pretty privileged hire. I'm so sorry. But Iron Man 3, I love him, and Iron Man is just so much fun. So yeah. Then finally I watched Squid Game, all of it. It was amazing. I can't believe I hadn't watched it yet, and me and my boyfriend binged it in a few days. It was amazing, and I regret not watching it sooner. And I think the rest of season 2 is coming out in June, I believe. So I will be sat waiting for that. So that is all the media I consumed this month. I loved it. It was so nice to start the year off with just some good art. Honestly, I loved it so much, and I can't wait to make a lot more videos. I've definitely been on a slow one with Christmas and moving back here in terms of making videos. So yeah, we'll see if I can get back to it in the coming month. But yeah, let me know what you read and what you watched last month. I love talking to anyone about both of those topics, so I'm excited to hear. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.